So you want to know the easiest place in the world to open a bank account? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to tell you in this video. But instead of just giving you one place to open accounts, I'm going to give you 6 of the easiest offshore and international banking hubs to consider. These are places that are fast, affordable, and do not ask a ton of insane questions during the account opening process, at least not usually. Now, if this is the first time that we've met, my name is Chris. I'm the head of banking relationships at GlobalBanks. We help investors, entrepreneurs, and businesses navigate cross-border banking and financial services around the world. And that means that we know what it takes to open accounts in all of the major international and offshore banking hubs for both foreign non-resident individuals and companies. Now listen, I didn't really want to make this video for 2 big reasons. First, because I don't think that opening in the easiest country is the best way to approach international and offshore banking. And second, because how easy a country is, it depends on the person or the business applying for an account, as well as how much money they're looking to deposit when opening. But I talked this through with the team and decided that I can highlight 6 different countries. That way we can talk through options that should be easy for a wider range of people. So hopefully one of these 6 banking hubs will be interesting for you. This is going to include 3 in-person opening options and 3 remote opening options. But before I dive into these countries, I just want to share a quick disclaimer. The kind of countries where accounts can be opened easily are not often the best places to bank. And for that reason, you might be surprised that I skipped over a few popular options, the kind of places that other people tell you to bank in. And that's because no matter how easy these other places are, we think that you should avoid them completely, but more on that in a bit. Right now, let's dig into our first country where it's easy to open bank accounts. And in no particular order, the first place that we're going to discuss is Portugal. Now, Portugal isn't nearly as popular as it was even a couple years ago. The rollback of tax incentives tied to golden visa programs has really slowed down the waves of foreigners rushing into Lisbon, though it's still a popular place for Westerners, especially Americans, Canadians, and certain Europeans. But even when Portugal was one of the top destinations for foreigners, it seemed like people were scrambling to open accounts, which really confused us. Because frankly, we think Portugal is one of the easiest places to open a bank account in Europe, if you show up in person. We've even helped a huge number of our clients open bank accounts in Portugal remotely. But like I said, I'm talking about in-person account opening here. And if you want to open accounts in Portugal as a foreign non-resident, you can do so with just a few €100. Though there is one hurdle that you will need to overcome, which requires an hour of your time on the ground in Portugal. And that hurdle is acquiring an NIF, a fiscal ID number, from a local tax office. That's it. Once you have your NIF, you'll be able to open accounts at a few of the major Portuguese banks as a foreign non-resident in person. But I do want to warn you, a lot of these lower deposit Portuguese banking options, they have restrictions and fees. So you need to look at the restrictions and the fees before you decide which bank to open an account with. Also, one really important consideration is whether the bank is going to allow you to close the account remotely. This is important because if you open an account with monthly fees and you don't want to continue paying those fees, are you really going to want to get on a plane and fly to Portugal just to close the account? Like I said, there are remote options available, but deposits typically start around $25,000 and higher, though even then it can be tough to qualify for these remote options. Okay, let's look at another option, and this one is not discussed very often, at least not from a banking perspective, and it is Poland. Yes. Believe it or not, opening a bank account in Poland is relatively straightforward if you show up in person. In fact, Poland is just one of several European Union countries where, like Portugal, in-person account opening is relatively easy. Now, you obviously need to know which banks to visit, and you do need to meet certain account opening requirements. But the big hurdles, like having proof of a local Polish address and all of the extra documents you might be asked for in other countries, it won't come up here, at least not at the right banks. Instead, Polish banks, they will want to know who you are, what you do, and why you want an account in Poland. And if you're a frequent visitor, have family in Poland, or you want to open an account in a more stable jurisdiction than your home country, then you shouldn't have any problems qualifying for an account. Now, if you're thinking about banking here, you should only be considering opening in a major city center like Warsaw, Krakow, or Poznan. And that's because you'll have plenty of branches to choose from as well as multiple banks. And these locations will be more familiar with applications from foreign nationals. If you give yourself an afternoon, you should be able to manage the process pretty easily. Just bring copies of all your documents with you. Now, being Poland, your account will be denominated in zloty, but most major Polish banks, they also offer accounts in euros, dollars, pounds, and even Swiss francs. And in most cases, you can also get a euro debit card for use abroad. Deposits are minimal with no real requirement, but if you're planning on opening an account, you should probably look at depositing at least 500 euros, which is around 2,000 zloty. Basically, if you're already in Poland, this can be an easy way to access multi-currency accounts, a euro debit card, or an account domiciled in the European Union, if that's of interest to you. Okay, our third in-person country. This one is also in Europe, but it's outside of the EU, and it's a fan favorite for the international community, and it is the Republic of Georgia. Now, if you've watched any of our past videos about banking in Europe, you know that we have mixed feelings about Georgia. And generally speaking, we offer a very cautious approach to banking here. Not because Georgia isn't suitable for opening a non-resident bank account, but because most people tell you this is the place to open accounts as a foreign non-resident. And we disagree with that approach completely. In fact, we only view Georgia as a backup banking hub, the kind of place that's okay to bank in if you can't open accounts in better jurisdictions instead. And while everyone says Georgia is great and has low deposits and you can open accounts here remotely, those on their own are not qualifications that make Georgia a sought-after banking hub by our standards. And as I've said in past videos, there are far better banking hubs with lower deposit requirements that offer 100% remote opening to foreign non-residents. But if you can't open in these other places and you're able to make a deposit in the $5,000 to $10,000 range, then Georgia is a country worth considering, even if it's just to get an international account with a payment card that allows you to access funds outside of your home country. So if you want to open accounts here, you can. In most cases, you will need to show up in person, which is why I'm covering it in the easy in-person banking options. But there are loopholes for remote opening that we help our clients access with certain Georgian banks. So if you're interested in exploring these loopholes, you can visit our website, globalbanks.com, and get in touch however you like. Okay, now before I share the 3 remote banking options, I have a quick favor to ask. If you have any specific countries that you want us to cover in terms of account opening, whether it's in person or remote, can you comment below with the name of the country? We can then start prioritizing future videos based on which country gets the most comments in this and other videos. So whichever country you want us to do a video on next, just type the name down below, and if you want a few different countries, feel free to write them all down. Okay, let's talk about remote account opening. And just to be clear, these are countries where foreign non-residents can open offshore and international accounts 100% remotely without ever visiting the country. Also, the last country that I'm going to share is one of the most popular countries we get asked about, and while most people think it's super difficult to open there or that you have to show up in person, it's actually pretty straightforward if you know how to apply and which banks to approach, but more on that in a minute. The first remote opening option that we're going to discuss is the Isle of Man. In past videos, I've characterized the Isle of Man as a retail version of offshore banking, and I stand by that description. And a big reason for that is that the Isle of Man, it offers low deposit offshore accounts to foreign non-residents, but the actual accounts are basically checking or savings accounts with limited functionality. The deposits here, they're generally between £5,000 and £75,000, depending on the bank, the type of account, and your profile. But in most cases, when people are looking to deposit above £50,000 or even up to £75,000, we typically suggest that they look at other banking options instead. And the reason for that is there's a wider range of banks that offer better services and fee structures at these deposit levels. Though it's important to point out that the £50,000 to £75,000 range is an odd deposit level. It's obviously higher than standard retail banking, but it's below the minimum range for most premier banking options, which usually start around $150,000. The point is, Isle of Man banks can accept foreign non-residents, and they do offer low deposit accounts, which you can open remotely. But one important point here is they do generally have restrictions on residency, and they cater to expats, non-residents. So if you're sitting in your home country and wanting to bank offshore, the Isle of Man probably isn't going to be a great fit for you. Instead, this next country with a slightly higher deposit might be worth considering instead, and it is the Republic of Panama. I want to set the record straight about banking in Panama. Panama isn't as foreigner-friendly when it comes to banking as everyone says. Generally speaking, it's very difficult to open bank accounts in Panama unless you're coming in at higher deposit levels or you're already a resident. So why am I including it on a list of easy places to bank? Well, it's because Panama is still an offshore banking hub, and while most of the major Panama banks do not accept foreign non-residents, if you choose the right bank for your specific profile, you can open accounts here without visiting Panama. And in most cases, you can do so with very low deposits. Most people can expect to deposit between $10,000 and $25,000, but we've also seen certain banks open at lower levels on a case-by-case basis. Now, 2 important points about Panama. First, despite all the negative attention that Panama has received over the last decade, the banking sector is relatively well run, certain banks have solid balance sheets, and they tend to offer decent service in English along with access to foreign currency. And the second point is that in order to open in Panama, you do generally need a reason for banking here. And what I mean by that is a catalyst for wanting to bank in the country. Maybe you're a frequent visitor to Panama, you're thinking about investing there, maybe you already own real estate there, or maybe you're planning on moving to Panama in the near future. Whatever it is, most Panama banks will want some level of rationale for banking in the country. So if you have a reason, Panama can be a good option, especially if you're just getting started in the offshore banking world and you want access to a stable dollarized banking hub with a low deposit that you can open remotely. Now, next up is a very different jurisdiction, and it might surprise you. But before I share this next country, since you've made it this far in the video, if you're getting any value, can you do me a quick favor and give this video a like? It tells us that you like this sort of video and that we should keep making more of them for you in the future. Okay, the next country for remote account opening is the United States. Now, I've covered the United States in a number of different videos, and it's one of the most popular countries when it comes to opening accounts for foreign non-residents. But you might be wondering, why is it on the easy list? Well, the reason is simple. If you know what you're doing, opening in the United States can be easy. And what I really mean is, if you know which banks cater to your profile, have deposit requirements you can meet, and allow foreign non-residents to open remotely, you will be able to open US bank accounts without getting on a plane. In almost all cases, foreign non-residents can open bank accounts in the US with as little as $25,000, though in certain instances you can open with less. Of course, depending on the bank, the deposit requirement can be up to as high as $250,000. And that's a similar range for business accounts, which typically start at $25,000 and go up to $250,000. Again, this depends on the bank. Though businesses, they also have the option of opening with fintech platforms with very low, sometimes zero deposits, though we only suggest using these platforms for transactional banking, not holding meaningful balances. Now, a lot of the information that you need to open a US bank account can be very difficult to find, which is why we have a dedicated account opening service for the US, GlobalBanks USA, which you can learn more about at globalbanks.com/USA. But you can also get started on the process of opening US bank accounts by yourself using this video right here, where I walk you through the steps to open US bank accounts 100% remotely as a foreign non-resident. On the other hand, if you think I missed a few of the easy countries for account opening that you hear other people talk about, like Belize, Puerto Rico, the Cook Islands, you'll find those countries over here, along with 8 other countries that everyone else tells you to bank in that we think you should avoid.